Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah, and I said y'all. And I'll count on you fixing the sound, but yeah, I'm not really sure where my dialect is from. I don't know if a couple of years ago you all saw the USA Today survey that went around that was supposed to ask you a series of 25 questions to see where you're from, or where at least your dialect is from. And I see a couple of head shakes. It was a lot of fun for some people. And it was pretty accurate. A lot of people was like, yeah, that's where I was born. Man, this nailed it. How did it do that? It would get down to the city and the state that you're from. Well, I was born in Michigan, so I had some northern-ish parents, northern, at least Midwest. I was raised in the Carolinas, but I've lived in California, Southern California, most of my adult life. I lived sometime in Japan, so all over the place. So I'm thinking, man, I'm going to be right in the middle of the United States, neutral dialect, something like that. And at the time, I had just started doing some work, this is a few years ago, at the NHRG corporate office. And I went through this survey, went through it, and they ask you stuff, I call them roly-polies, I call them crawdads, they ask you all those sorts of things. And I got in there, and number one came up, Jackson, Mississippi. Is apparently where my dialect is from, and I had maybe spent a month there. So I must be some sort of a chameleon when it comes to that. And I know we've already mentioned a couple times today, there's the South, there's the Deep South, and there's the Mississippi Delta. So although I was raised primarily in the South, I'm not sure how I leapfrogged the Deep South right into around the Mississippi Delta, but anyway. Pleasure to be here today. I'm going to ask 3 quick questions, and I ask you to keep your hands raised. The first question is probably going to hurt my feelings, but I'm okay. I'm prepared for it. And then keep your hands raised. I just want to get a quick survey of where we're playing. First question, again, just keep your hand raised. Who has ever met me before, heard of me before, or worked with me? Better than I'd hoped. Keep them raised real quick. I promise I'll be quick. Second question, who's ever heard of Accelerant before, Accelerant Solutions? Okay, a couple more hands. Fantastic. Last question, who's ever heard of David Heller before? Okay, fantastic. That's what I was hoping for. So what I'd tell you is if you know David's been a good friend of ours for a couple of years now. He's been working with Accelerant. We've been working on a few projects together. He's the one that introduced me to NHRG, and I'll get into kind of where Accelerant came from, where I came from, and why we're interested. So I don't mind telling you that if you know David Heller, you probably know Accelerant, and I'm okay putting our name with him. And hopefully, David, you're fine with that too? All right, good. I've just put us all in the same sock. So let me grab the clicker here. So as James told you, we were selected, we were approached and selected to begin management of the Nuclear Human Resources Group, which was humbling and an honor to even be approached for the opportunity. And we said, okay, we'll explore it, we'll take a look at it. And then we went down that road. It seemed like it would work out. We're excited to do it. And they said, hey, now you got a speaking part on Monday, congratulations. You got about 30 minutes. So my question back was, well, what do you think everybody wants to know? Sure, I can get up and talk for an hour straight. I used to be an instructor by trade, and those who know me well, I could sit up here the entire afternoon and just talk about nothing. I can talk about Game of Thrones, I can talk about the U.S. women's soccer team, whatever you want to talk about. But the 4 questions were, hey, who is Accelerant? What does Accelerant do? Why did you want to be involved with NHRG? And what's the future of NHRG? Which was a huge question. We could certainly spend another 30 minutes on that. And quite honestly, I'm really going to put that back on NHRG, because I'm not NHRG, the steering committee is not NHRG, everybody in this room is NHRG. So the first thing there, who's Accelerant, real quick. I'm not going to sit here and read PowerPoints to you. I never did as an instructor. I'm not about to start today. But I'll focus you on 2 things. They're Ohio-based, which is a problem for me for 2 reasons. Number one, I live in Carlsbad, California. And January business meetings aren't a lot of fun for me in Toledo, Ohio. So that's one problem. The other is I went to Clemson University. And hey, all right, fantastic. Go Tigers. I met a Gamecock earlier today, but I think we worked it out. So a lot of people who work with Accelerant, the officers are Ohio State Buckeyes and or Michigan Wolverine fans. So, but it's okay. We get over those things, and as long as Clemson keeps winning the national championship, we're all going to be okay. And then the other word there, international. So we do work internationally. We do a few things. We've worked over in the UK, the United Arab Emirates, for example, and a few other places. So we do get out and about quite a bit. I'm not going to talk about everything that we do, but just quick high-level stuff. We focus on compliance, performance, and training. For compliance, more regulatory type-based stuff. NRC, I know we talked about regulatory margin earlier, so we go in there and really help with regulatory margin, where they got too far down in the NRC matrix or wherever you are. So we've assisted a lot of stations with 95003 efforts, manual chapter 350 efforts. We've helped lead a couple of those evolutions. Then technical documents, so procedure writing and things like that. Again, not going to get into a ton of detail. Performance, that's more of our INPO excellence-based stuff. How can we strive for excellence, fill those gaps to excellence. So we certainly come in, do analyses, doing assessments for organizations, compare you against criteria, give you some standard recommendations. We have a lot of experts with a lot of expertise. Experts should have expertise. So we deal a lot with the INPO PO&Cs there in CO6, which is where human resources falls under. And I know a few of you in the room, we've come in and done some analyses against those criteria for you. Also using a lot of the 1505 leadership and team attributes that can really help you kind of sharpen that pencil to figure out exactly where you need to pinpoint some of your solutions. And then training, which probably gets more to what this group's interested in. And what I'll tell you is we were founded as a training based company about 16 years ago. And so although, yeah, we do with skills training and help with accreditation support and all that, and traditionally that's where we started, we absolutely found ourselves getting into knowledge retention and workforce capacity. And we can talk a little bit more about that when I get to a later slide. In fact, the next one. So the second question, what has Accelerant done? Again, just going to pick a few quick things to fill you in. HROR analysis assessments, I've already kind of hit on that one. It's just been a lot of fun going in, taking a look at what's going on. We really enjoy helping make sense out of the noise. So coming in as that third-party perspective, seeing what you got going on, look back the last 3 to 5 years, see what you got going on right now, and giving some recommendations. Hey, here's the 3 to 5 things that are give you your bang for your buck, going forward. Take it or leave it. And we have a couple great people out there helping multiple organizations in this capacity. Perform site and fleet-wide improvements. Already kind of hit on that one. Won't hit on it again. And then establish an innovation lab. So that's a buzzword that's probably been flying around for the past year or two about that. I encourage you to pick up your phone and Google it if you need to. I see somebody already picking up a phone. So, innovation lab. And the reason why we've done that is, we've heard it a couple times today, talking about technology, talking about human beings, talking about millennials, post-millennials, and having Wi-Fi and foxholes. So years ago we identified, bless you, years ago we identified that this is coming, that the need to use technology in our industry is only growing. And just to be quite honest, I was in-house, I worked for Duke Energy, I worked at San Onofre Nuclear in-house, and I came from a fully digitized nuclear aircraft carrier, is what I worked on. And it was quite a shock for me. My perception was, wow, if this is what the Navy's doing, just imagine what the commercial nuclear industry's doing. And so I marched right in there to songs and a pneumatic transmitter. You're using air to push stuff around? What happened with electrons? And just, you already know. I already know by the chuckles. You already know what that looked like. So it's always been semi-embarrassing to me, being a part of the industry that I love. That's where we've been with technology. So we've really, over the past 5 years, we've sought out partnerships, solutions, and really partnered up with not just utilities, but people around the world that were the best at this. So we've set up an innovation laboratory where we can just kind of be a think tank and latch on to an organization and have some pretty neat ideas going on. The third question, why help NHRG? Because it's going to make us a ton of money, right? Yeah. No, not at all. Not even close. David will attest to that. It really came down to one thing, and this is something not only in my initial interactions with members of the Nuclear Human Resources Group, but with the steering committee, with people like David and others, is what we learned quickly is we share just a deep passion for people. It was just, it's a fun conversation, and I'll tell you just today, it's rung out true, and it's just been supported by all the speakers that have come up here and just people that I've met on some of the breaks talking about the passion for people. And I'll tell you, the one that's been the most impactful to me is the Accelerant and NHRG coming up and talking about decommissioning. Because every other conference I go to out there, and I go to quite a bit over the year, it's, they put up the same slides, right? Here's where natural gas prices are. Woe is us. It's doom and gloom, and that's what it looks like. And yes, it is. That is the reality. But what I appreciated from those presentations is, hey, let's finish strong. Let's be positive. Let's be proud of what we're doing, and let's take care of the people in the process and not ignore that. So I'll just tell you, fundamentally, Accelerant, it's the same type of culture that we had, just sharing that passion for people. Yeah, we got equipment out there we got to run, and that's important too. We got to look at the dollars, that's important too. But let's not take our eyes off what ultimately we all should be doing, is improving the lives of those around us. And so I would tell you, fundamentally, if I just had to answer the question, that would be it right there, is just sharing that passion for people. Now, I told you real quick that, we started off as a training organization, but we quickly found that passion for people and training was easily translatable over to human resources, organizational effectiveness, and those types of areas. We just couldn't avoid it. We'd be working with succession planning within the training division. Okay, your ops instructor's coming in, and 3 to 5 years, what's your profile look like? And we're talking about succession planning, knowledge management, knowledge retention, all of those things. And I would tell you, over the past decade, that's really, not so intentionally, but that's where we've migrated, is really getting into that human resources, organizational effectiveness bubble as well. And it's really led to some interesting things for us. One primarily that we've been involved with for years now is Accelerant. We're a sitting member of CINTAC, the Civilian Nuclear Trade Advisory Council, that's chaired by Secretary Perry. And so we get to sit on that board and give recommendations and influence policy. And then just recently, they just set up some subcommittees, and we're now the chair, Accelerant's the chair of what they call the infrastructure subcommittee that reports to Secretary Perry. Now, that doesn't sound so fantastic, or maybe it's not so applicable, but there's 3 main things that subcommittee focuses on. It's knowledge management and retention, training, and talent management are the things that they focus on. So we're excited about that opportunity to be a part of that at a national level, at a U.S. policy level. And we're already seeing ways of how we can bring in how this group functions and collaborates, and the ideas that are coming from the Nuclear Human Resources group, and to maybe even influence what's going on there, and vice versa, a two-way street, inform, hey, this is kind of what's going on. This is what we're thinking. So there's that one, and then the national laboratories have approached us about doing some studies, and which is just fun. Again, working, I don't know why, maybe because I was in the military, but just working for the government, working for the DOE sounds exciting. And I don't believe we have members or anybody here from the DOE or any of the national laboratories. Is that correct? I think it's something we want to work on as a part of the group. So we'd like to work to strengthen that bond as well, because it just increased the collaboration that's already going on. So the last one, the big one, what is the future? I couldn't agree with the General more. Where I always like to start is, what's your mission statement? What's your vision? What's the thing? What's your rallying cry? What do you need to keep going back to, and making sure that everybody's aligned to what they need to do. So again, I'm not going to read if you haven't seen it before, this is the NHRG charter. But I want to focus again on 2 words, one being forum. So forum, just a collection of people, exchange of ideas who are like-minded and trying to move in the right direction. The other word there is uniquely. Uniquely. Because like every other area in our industry, even though there's parallels outside of the nuclear industry, we are special and unique. And although some of the stuff might be applicable, there's always the fact that we got neutrons flying around, and there's something that goes along with that. So there are some things differently that we have to do. And I can't remember whose slide it was, but somebody, and I'd seen it before, talks about how we're about 60% people heavy. Whereas in almost every other industry, it's about 20% people, 80% capex, or 80%, and it's flip-flopped here in the nuclear industry, but about everywhere else it's different. So it's unique, and so we have to continue to ask our questions. Why is that? What can we do about that? Which is one of the things the National Labs is approaching us about. So on this, another question I asked is, David and others, steering committee, what do you hear most out there? If there was one thing we had to improve in the Nuclear Human Resources group, because we don't want to come in, it's a smooth transition. Dave's still working with us, so we don't want to rock the boat. We want to keep it an excellent conference and an excellent organization. So I don't want to come and kick in the saloon doors and we're going to change everything and we're going to take over the world. What is the one thing that maybe we could focus on, or that people were crying out for? And it was really increased collaboration has kept coming up. I already like what I'm seeing here in the conference. This has just been a fantastic experience already, and this is just day one. But I think we all would agree once a year is not enough to continually keep things in motion the way we want it to go. So we would agree with that. You've got to stay engaged. You've got to stay plugged in. We want to collaborate with each other, and we got to find some ways to do that. And if you read my bio or whatever else, I talk about the innovation laboratories. The first lever I always try to look at is technology. Is there something that we can do that makes sense to take technology and advance the human spirit? And in a way that makes sense, because too many times, you buy the new latest software or whatever else, but there's a lot of stuff out there that you can implement that really takes away from the human experience. So when we talk about technology, it's not just, hey, let's push a button and get a new technology solution. It really is, how can this work to increase collaboration and the spirit of collaboration? And one of the things we've talked about or found is what we call the smart open universe of learning, which just sounds great. And we love acronyms in the nuclear industry. So what's that acronym? SOUL. Doesn't that just sound great? I love that. Immediately it's like, oh man, I can take that. This is the soul of the organization. There were just so many places you could take that acronym. But it's a really clever tool that we stumbled upon. It's being used in the U.S. nuclear industry. It's being used abroad. It's being used in aviation, education institutions globally. And it's what I just tell you real quick about it. It's really a social learning platform. It has forums, SME areas, interactivity, games built in there. And I'm not talking like NHRG, Fortnite, or something like that. It's probably closer to like Oregon Trail. I think I'm looking around the room. You know what I'm saying when I say Oregon Trail. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we know. And there's an app for that, by the way, if you haven't discovered it yet. You can still get on there and die of dysentery and snake bites. More of that. Some other terms that are being thrown out here. Using artificial intelligence. How am I doing on time? Because I'm horrible on time. Am I good? Yeah. How many? 10, okay. Even going back to instructor, I was horrible with breaks. I was horrible with watching the clock. So thanks, 10 minutes. Using artificial intelligence even. How can we use analytics to, again, look for gaps in the organization, feed it back to the learner, to the student, and the spirit of knowledge management retention. It even sends out questions to phones and things like that. Stuff right now that generationally, I know some would embrace and some wouldn't. But I'll tell you, I just love the visual. I'm going to use that somehow better in the Wi-Fi in a foxhole, type analogy, and I just love that analogy. So that's the last piece I wanted to say on that. I did want to introduce a few people. If you wanted to learn more about the smart open universe of learning, we do have some friends from abroad, from Spain. First, I'd like to introduce Paco Sanchez. He's the president of Technotom USA, Madrid, vice president of safety operations and training. Next, Jose Delgado. He's the vice president of Technotom USA. And these are the guys that have been spearheading all this clever stuff that I'm talking about. And then Jose Martin, who's the projects director. And they do have a booth set up in the corner here if you want to learn more. And also, Paco, I believe you're giving a 30-minute presentation on Wednesday afternoon. So I'd invite you, those of you who are going to be there, you'll learn a lot more about this neat tool. And I'll tell you something that was kind of fun recently. We had a chief nuclear officer and a chief executive officer in virtual reality goggles, augmented reality goggles, and that was a lot of fun to watch. That was a lot of fun to watch. Next I'd like to introduce Jason Smith. Jason, stand up in the back there. So Jason's on the Accelerant team with me, and he's kind of the one sitting hand in hand with David Heller, making sure we get a smooth transition and management of the group. And already picking up, we've already signed contracts for if you haven't heard yet, next year the conference is in Atlanta. And we have signed and sealed that paperwork, which I know for most of you East Coasters, that's happy news, especially if you just got recently hung up in with the weather trying to get here for this week. So next year we'll be in Atlanta, and Jason will be primarily helping David Smith out with that. And we're excited about it. Again, humbled and honored by the opportunity. And I want to leave some time for questions. And if there's you'll see me around. I'll be in the hallways. I'll be at all the events this week. But right now, any questions on the future of NHRG? Fantastic. Everybody wants to hear Bob talk. So do I. I'm just glad I didn't go after the general. So I appreciate that, David. Tough act to follow. Well, hey, thank you for your time, everyone. I appreciate it, and see you around.